There's a moment in every relationship, a moment so powerful it changes everything. He might not see it coming, he might not even know it's happening, but the second it hits like a lightning bolt. This is when he begins to realize something so profound, it forces him to pause and question everything he thought he knew about love, connection, and himself. You see, this is the moment he discovers what he's been missing all along. And let me tell you, it's a game changer. He didn't see it at first. He couldn't, not because it wasn't there, but because he wasn't looking for it. He thought he understood what strength looked like. He thought it was loud, forceful, commanding. He associated it with dominance, with control, with someone who never shows emotion. But when he met you, everything he believed about strength started to unravel. You weren't loud. You weren't trying to dominate a room, but there was something undeniable about your presence. Something rooted, grounded, unwavering. It wasn't until he walked away that he realized what it was. It was strength, the kind of strength that doesn't perform for applause, the kind that doesn't need to be seen to be real. He remembers the way you responded to difficulty, not with panic, not with blame, but with composure, with clarity. He didn't understand it then. He might have even mistaken it for detachment. But now, with distance and time, he realizes that what he was witnessing was emotional maturity. You didn't react, you responded. You didn't lash out, you paused. You didn't chase, you reflected. And that kind of strength, that kind of grace under pressure, that stays with a man, that lingers long after the conversations have ended. Because in a world where emotional chaos is normalized, you were peace, and peace is addictive. He underestimated how powerful you really were because your power didn't demand the spotlight. You didn't need to constantly prove your worth. You didn't seek validation from him or anyone else. You simply were whole, centered, sure of who you are, even when the ground beneath you felt uncertain. You didn't fall apart in front of him just to make him feel needed. You didn't pretend to be smaller so he could feel bigger, and in hindsight, that's what scared him. Because your strength meant he had to level up to stand beside you, and he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. He wasn't ready to be seen so clearly by someone who didn't need him to feel strong, but could stand powerfully with or without him. It's not just that you were strong, it's how you used that strength. You were compassionate without being a doormat. You were forgiving without being naive. You were patient, but never passive. You could love deeply without losing yourself in someone else's chaos. He thought love meant merging, losing pieces of yourself to become one. But you showed him something radically different. You taught him that love could exist between two whole people, people who choose each other without needing to fix, change, or rescue. That kind of love takes strength, real strength, and that terrified him, because deep down, he knew he hadn't yet become the kind of man who could meet you there. He starts to remember the small moments now, the times you stood firm in your truth, even when it made you unpopular. The times you spoke up, not to provoke, but to protect your peace. The way you never begged for affection, never competed for attention, never tried to convince anyone to stay. He realizes now that you didn't just have strength. You had self-respect. And that self-respect wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, subtle, but it shaped every choice you made. And the more he remembers, the more he misses it. Because once a man has witnessed a woman stand in her power like that, no one else quite measures up. And now he sits with the weight of his own awakening. Because back then, he thought strength meant who could hold out the longest in a fight, who could stay cold, who could win. But you taught him that strength is vulnerability. Strength is integrity. Strength is the ability to be soft in a world that hardens people. You were strong enough to stay open, even when you were afraid. Strong enough to love, even when it wasn't returned the way you deserved. Strong enough to walk away when you realized staying meant shrinking. That kind of strength takes years to build, and now he sees it. Now he gets it, but now it's too late to hold it. Your strength changed him. Not in the way he expected, not in the way that made him feel heroic or powerful, but in the way that made him confront himself, because your strength held up a mirror. It showed him his avoidance, his inconsistency, his inability to meet you where you stood. You never tried to break him down. You simply invited him to rise, and when he couldn't or wouldn't, you didn't collapse, you let him go. That was the moment he realized your strength was never about resistance. It was about resilience, and now he's left with the echo of it. A strength so rare, so grounded, so alive. It haunts him in the spaces where your presence used to be. He didn't realize what he had until the silence settled in. Not the silence of an argument or distance, but the silence of your absence. The kind of quiet that speaks volumes, the kind that forces him to confront the space you once filled. You didn't leave with drama. You didn't slam doors or throw accusations. You left with grace, you left with dignity, and in doing so, you taught him something he never understood before. You were never his to possess, you were someone who chose to be there. And when you stopped choosing him, he had to face the truth. You didn't need him. You had your own life, your own rhythm, your own center, and now, without you, his world feels off. Balance. He remembers the way you never begged for his attention. How you never molded yourself into what he wanted you to be. You showed up as you were, fully, unapologetically, and consistently. You had your own passions, your own friends, your own dreams. You didn't pause your life for him. You let him be part of it, yes, but never at the expense of losing yourself, and that baffled him. He was used to people who revolved around him, who shifted their priorities to keep him comfortable. But you didn't orbit anyone. You were the sun in your own universe, and now he sees it. Now he feels what it's like to no longer bask in that light. It wasn't that you didn't care. You cared deeply. He knows that now. But your care wasn't wrapped in desperation. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't conditional. You weren't trying to win his love. You were offering yours freely, but never at the cost of self. Betrayal. That kind of love, pure, grounded, and detached from outcome, is rare, and he didn't know what to do with it. He mistook your independence for detachment. He thought your ability to walk away meant you didn't feel as deeply. But what he didn't understand is that your independence wasn't emotional distance. It was emotional intelligence. You loved him, but you never lost yourself in the process. He starts to remember the small ways you stayed rooted in your own identity. The way you kept showing up for your work, your health, your goals. You didn't shrink yourself to fit into his world. You brought your own table to the room. He remembers watching you move through life with a kind of quiet confidence that didn't demand attention, but always drew it. He couldn't articulate it at the time, but now he understands. You had a full life, with or without him. You weren't using the relationship as a crutch or a hiding place. You were in it because you wanted to be, not because you needed to be. And now that you're gone, he's realizing how rare that kind of presence really is. He thought he wanted someone who would prioritize him above all else, someone who would make him the center of her world. But what he didn't understand is that being someone's asterisk, everything asterisk sounds romantic until it becomes suffocating. With you, he had space, space to grow, space to think, space to be, and now, being with someone who clings, who depends, who can't breathe without him, it feels heavy. It feels wrong, because now he knows what it's like to be with a woman who could breathe just fine on her own, who gave from her overflow, not her depletion, who didn't lose herself to keep a relationship alive. And now he's suffocating in all the places you once offered air. There's a difference between independence and isolation, and you taught him that. You were never cold, never closed off. You shared your thoughts, your emotions, your dreams. But you also respected your own boundaries. You knew when to pull back, when to rest, when to focus on yourself, and he didn't know how to interpret that kind of balance. He was used to extremes, people who either clung too tightly or shut down completely. But you lived in the middle, in the healthy tension between intimacy and individuality. He didn't know how much he needed that until it was gone. Now every interaction feels either too much or not enough. Because he's tasted balance, and it tasted like freedom, he's beginning to understand that what made you magnetic wasn't just your beauty, your intelligence, or your charm. It was your sovereignty, the way you never handed over your power, the way you didn't play games to keep his interest. You were honest, you were direct. You didn't try to manipulate the narrative or twist yourself into someone more likable. You were you, fully and completely. And in a world full of masks and performances, that kind of authenticity is revolutionary. And now that he's seen it, now that he's felt it, nothing else quite compares. The women who try too hard, who chase, who abandon themselves in pursuit of being chosen, they don't move him. Because once a man has witnessed the strength of a woman who chooses herself, everything else feels hollow. He doesn't expect to miss you, not like this. Not in the way that haunts him in quiet moments, not in the way that catches him off guard in the middle of the day, not in the way that makes his chest tighten when he thinks of the last time you spoke. But the truth is, it starts the moment he discovers something he didn't see clearly when he had you, your strength. He thought strength looked like stubbornness, like always having to be right, like dominance. But your strength, it's silent, it's soft, it's powerful in the way an oak tree stands through a storm. You didn't yell, you didn't beg, you didn't try to convince him to see your worth. You let your silence speak. And in that silence, he started to hear the sound of everything he lost. He didn't understand your strength when he had it. He mistook your calm for passivity, your grace for weakness. But now that you're gone, he sees it for what it was, something rare. Something rooted. Something that wouldn't bend to make him more comfortable. And that's when the longing begins, because no one else feels quite like that. He begins to realize that what made you so different wasn't just how you carried yourself, but how little you relied on him to define you. You were independent, not just financially or socially, but emotionally. You didn't orbit around his mood. You didn't contort yourself to keep the peace or chase him for crumbs of attention. You had a full life before him, and you made it clear you'd have one after, too. That unsettled him in the beginning. At first, he didn't know what to do with a woman who didn't need saving. But what he didn't understand back then is that your independence wasn't a wall. It was an invitation. An invitation for him to show up as a partner, not a rescuer. He didn't get it. He wanted someone to depend on him so he could feel important, not realizing that true importance comes from being chosen, not needed. And now that you're not around, he's realizing that every other woman who clings to him doesn't feel like home. They feel like noise, because what he's missing is the quiet confidence of someone who chose herself first. What really shook him, though, what keeps playing over and over in his mind, is the moment he realized you had boundaries, not ultimatums, not emotional manipulation, but clear, firm, non-negotiable boundaries that told him exactly how to love you. He had never seen that before. He was used to blurred lines, to people bending just to stay close to him. But you didn't bend, you didn't beg, you stood firm in your truth, and you made no apologies for it. And when he crossed the line, when he tested how far he could push you, you didn't argue, you just stepped back. That's when he felt the cold. That's when he realized he was no longer standing in the warmth of your presence. And it hit him, love without respect isn't love at all. He didn't respect you when he had you because he didn't understand what it meant to be with someone who respects themselves. Now that he's gone, he's learning the hard way. Boundaries don't chase, they don't scream, they disappear, and leave a man alone with the echo of everything he refused to listen to. You showed him something else, too. Something he didn't even know he craved until it was gone. Vulnerability, real, raw, unfiltered vulnerability. Not the kind that tries to manipulate sympathy or demand attention, but the kind that says, "Here I am, flaws and all. Take it or leave it." And he saw it. He saw you show up with your heart open, even when it hurt, even when it scared you, even when it would have been easier to shut down and stay guarded. You let him in, not because you needed him to fix you, but because you believed love was worth the risk. And what did he do with that vulnerability? He flinched. He backed away. He wasn't ready. But now, in the silence of your absence, he understands the weight of what you gave him. Vulnerability is a gift, not a burden. And now, he's left wondering why he couldn't hold it when it was freely given. There's a hunger that follows him now, a restless, aching hunger he can't quite name. It started the moment he saw your passion. Not just for him, but for life, for your purpose, for your dreams. You woke up every day with intention. You lit up when you spoke about the things you loved, and it wasn't performative. It was real. He was drawn to it, even if he didn't understand it. He watched you create, build, lead, inspire, and instead of rising to meet you, he shrank. And now he looks around and sees passionless people doing passionless things, and it exhausts him. Because once you've seen someone burn with that much life, it's hard to go back to the dim. He misses your fire, not because it made you loud, but because it made you alive. The greatest ache, though, the one that cuts deepest, is the memory of yourself. Love, you didn't just speak confidence. You lived it. You didn't settle. You didn't perform. You didn't overextend just to prove your worth. You loved yourself out loud, and that was revolutionary to him, because most of the love he knew was transactional. Conditional, exhausting, but yourself, love was non-negotiable. It set the standard, and when he couldn't meet it, when he couldn't rise to love you the way you loved yourself, you didn't lower the bar. You walked, and that's the moment he knew no one else would ever come close, because no one else would ever teach him how to love like you did, by first loving themselves. And now he sits in the quiet, in the aftermath, with a heart full of revelations and a mind full of memories he can't escape. He didn't understand what you were doing when you showed him your heart. Not just the polished parts, not the version you'd edited for safety, but the raw, honest, trembling truth of who you are. He thought vulnerability was weakness, something to avoid, something to hide. But you gave it to him anyway, not because you didn't know better, but because you did. You knew that love isn't real if it's only built on performance. You didn't offer the easy version of yourself. You offered the real one. And for a man who had spent most of his life hiding behind pride, your willingness to be open shook him. He didn't have the tools to receive it. So he looked away, he pulled back. He mistook your honesty for pressure, your softness for insecurity. But now, with your absence echoing in every corner of his life, he realizes what you gave him was the rarest thing of all, truth without armor. He remembers the way you sat across from him and told the truth, even when it cracked your voice. Even when your hands trembled, you didn't try to paint yourself in a better light. You didn't manipulate the narrative. You just owned it. Your fears, your hopes, your insecurities, and in doing so, you did what most people can't. You allowed him to see you. Not the version crafted to win approval, but the version that risked rejection. That's what real vulnerability is, and he didn't get it then. He thought strength looked like holding it together. He thought love meant never showing the messy, complicated parts. But now that you're gone, he's starting to feel the weight of 1,000 surface-level conversations that go nowhere. He misses the depth you brought. He misses how safe it felt to be seen by someone who wasn't judging, just witnessing. You had a softness that wasn't naive. It was courageous. You knew what it meant to be hurt, to be disappointed, to be let down. But you didn't let that harden you. You chose to remain open. You chose to speak from your heart when it would have been easier to shut down. That choice, it wasn't weakness. It was power, quiet power, sacred power, and he sees now that it was your vulnerability that made you magnetic. Not because you were fragile, but because you were real. You had the courage to say, "This is me," and let the chips fall where they may. Most people don't do that. Most people hide behind layers of defense, fear, and performance, but you never needed to pretend. You chose to be seen, even when it was scary, and that left a mark he can't forget. What he misses most is the way your vulnerability created connection, the way you could disarm a room with one sentence of truth. You didn't sugarcoat, you didn't perform, you just told the truth, and in doing so, you invited him into a space he didn't know he needed. A space where he didn't have to impress you, where he didn't have to prove anything. He could just be asterisk. You gave him that safety, not by coddling him, but by showing him what it looked like to be brave with your emotions. That kind of bravery, it's contagious, but it's also confronting. Because when someone shows up that honestly, it forces the other person to confront where they're still hiding. He wasn't ready, but now, when he looks around at all the filtered, guarded connections in his life, he realizes what you gave him was rare. And what he did with it was tragic. He used to think emotional intimacy was about grand declarations, long talks, and romantic gestures, but you showed him that real intimacy lives in the quiet moments, in the willingness to sit in silence, in the courage to say, "I'm scared," in the honesty of, "I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying." You didn't need drama to feel alive. You needed truth. You needed presence. You needed connection that wasn't built on roles or routines, but on raw, shared humanity. And now, as he cycles through relationships that feel scripted and safe, he remembers how alive it felt to be with someone who was actually their asterisk, not physically, emotionally, spiritually. You didn't just share your body, you shared your soul. And once a man has tasted that kind of connection, everything else feels like noise. He's starting to understand that your vulnerability wasn't about him. It was about you. It was a reflection of your own wholeness. You weren't sharing to get something from him. You were sharing because it's who you are. You didn't wait for perfect safety. You didn't need guarantees. You weren't trying to control the outcome. You were simply being honest because you had nothing to hide. That kind of self-possession, it's terrifying for people who are used to control, and he was one of them. He didn't know how to meet you there, so he tried to pull back to a place that felt safer. But now he's living in that safe space, and it's suffocating. Because the truth is, there's nothing safe about living in a world where no one tells the truth. And you were the first person who ever told him the truth with love. He didn't realize that vulnerability is what turns love from a concept into an experience. That without it, all the dates and texts and titles mean nothing. You brought that to the relationship. You brought the glue, the heartbeat, the soul, and he didn't understand that at the time. He thought love was about comfort. But real love, the kind that lasts, is about courage, and you were courageous in ways he wasn't ready to be. Now he's left with the ghost of your honesty, and it haunts him in the best and worst ways. Because now he knows, when a woman is brave enough to show you her heart, you don't look away. You meet her there, or you lose her, and he lost you. He didn't understand it at the time, but your silence was louder than any words you could have spoken. When you stopped explaining yourself, when you stopped trying to be understood, when you simply withdrew your energy without drama asterisk, that's asterisk when the shift began, at first, he mistook it for indifference. He thought you didn't care anymore, but over time he started to feel it, not just emotionally, but physically, the way the room felt colder, the way conversations felt emptier, the way your absence made everything he once took for granted feel suddenly, unbearably significant. Because when a woman like you goes quiet, it's not a game, it's not manipulation, it's closure, and now, long after the last conversation, he's beginning to realize what your silence was really saying. I've outgrown the version of me that needs to explain my worth to someone who can't see it. He remembers when you used to show up with your whole heart, the way you leaned in, emotionally available, open, curious. You gave chances, you gave time, you gave explanations, hoping that if you could just say it clearly enough, he'd get it. He'd show up, he'd meet you halfway, but instead he gave you inconsistency. He gave you mixed signals. He gave you just enough to keep you hoping, but never enough to make you feel held, and still you stayed, longer than most would have. Because you believed in him, you believed in the connection, but belief without reciprocity becomes betrayal of self. So one day you stopped explaining. You stopped arguing your value. You stopped waiting for someone who couldn't choose you fully. And that's the day he started to feel your absence, not just in the space you left, but in the space within him that had grown used to your warmth. At first, he tried to tell himself he was fine, that he didn't need you, that it was better this way. But what he didn't realize is that when a woman like you pulls away, she doesn't leave bitterness behind. She leaves clarity. He started to notice how loud the world became without you, how shallow the conversations felt, how exhausting it was to keep pretending that surface level connection could replace the depth you brought, because you didn't just speak words. You saw people. You listened with intention. You remembered the things that mattered, and now that he's surrounded by people who only want the highlight reel, he's haunted by the fact that you once wanted his whole story, and he didn't know how to let you in. He scrolls through your pictures now, not the curated ones, but the ones where your eyes told stories. He remembers how safe he felt in your presence, even if he never said it. He remembers the way you could make him laugh in the middle of an argument, the way you'd look at him like he mattered, even when he was making it hard to love him. And now, without your energy anchoring him, he feels untethered. He won't admit that out loud, not yet, but it's there. In the way he compares every new woman to you, in the way he finds himself searching for your face in crowds, in the way he checks your page just to see if you've moved on, because you didn't just walk away. You took the piece he didn't know you were providing. What's worse is that he didn't lose you in one big, dramatic moment. He lost you slowly, gradually, as a result of 100 little cuts, the unreturned messages, the missed opportunities to connect, the times you asked for emotional presence and got avoidance instead, the nights you cried quietly beside someone who wouldn't look up from his phone, and still you stayed, hoping it would shift. But when you finally stopped trying, when you stopped fighting for something that was one-sided, you didn't leave to hurt him. You left to heal yourself. And now he's stuck replaying all the moments he thought didn't matter. All the times he thought your silence was just moodiness, not self-preservation. And it's only now, in hindsight, that he realizes how patient you were, how many chances you gave, and how gracefully you left. He thought the end would look like anger, like slammed doors and long texts and unfinished arguments. But that's not how women like you leave. You leave in peace, in truth. You don't burn bridges. You just stop crossing them. You don't scream. You simply unplug your soul. And what he's finally realizing is that the absence of chaos doesn't mean the absence of impact. You didn't need to make a scene to make a statement. You just needed to stop showing up. And that decision, quiet as it was, broke something open inside him. Because now he's left sitting in the silence you created, trying to decipher a message that doesn't need words. This is what it looks like when a woman chooses herself. In the end, it wasn't your departure that wrecked him. It was your presence, the memory of it, the weight of it. The fact that you brought love that didn't need to be earned, only honored. And when he couldn't meet you there, you didn't punish him. You simply stepped back into yourself. That's the kind of loss that lingers, not because you took something from him, but because you stopped giving something he thought would always be there. Now he walks through his days with the echo of what you once offered: stability, affection, grace. And no matter how many smiles he fakes or how many new faces he entertains, he knows the truth. He lost you the moment he made you feel like you had to prove you were worth keeping. He didn't understand what he was losing until he watched you bloom without him. At first, he tried to dismiss it, told himself you were just pretending to be happy, that this was some phase, that you'd eventually come back. Because he always thought you'd orbit him, that your life somehow revolved around what you and he could build together. But when you left, you didn't collapse. You rose. You didn't unravel. You focused. You didn't chase. You built. And now he's sitting with the realization that you were never waiting to be rescued. You were only waiting to be seen . And when he refused to meet you, at eye level, you didn't fall apart. You evolved, and that's what he didn't expect. That losing you wouldn't just mean losing love, but watching that love become something even more powerful in your hands, momentum. He sees you now, not through the lens of nostalgia, but through the cold clarity of contrast. Because now he watches you doing things he never even knew you dreamed of. You've become the woman he always said you had the potential to be, but never supported you in becoming, and that truth stings. He sees your voice becoming stronger, your skin glowing in a peace he never helped create, your energy no longer drained from overextending to be understood. He sees the people who now surround you, those who celebrate your light instead of dimming it. He scrolls past your posts with a hollow ache in his chest, because for the first time, he's realizing what kind of fire he walked away from, or rather, what kind of fire he stood next to without ever really tending. At the time, he thought you needed him more than you did. That's what allowed him to stay half present, to take instead of give, to assume you'd always be there when he turned around. But what he didn't understand is that you weren't clinging, you were choosing. Every moment you stayed, it was a choice. Every moment you showed up, even when it was hard, even when he was distant or dismissive, you were choosing to believe in the best of him. And then, one day, you made a different choice. You chose yourself, you chose your peace, you chose the version of your life where you no longer had to shrink to be loved. And now, that choice echoes louder in his mind than any of the words you ever spoke. Because nothing is louder than a woman who chooses herself in silence. Now that you're gone, he feels the difference in every room he enters, not because you were loud, but because your presence brought a calm that can't be replicated. You didn't try to take up space. You became the space. You grounded him without trying to fix him. You brought stability without needing credit for it. You supported him without ever asking for a spotlight. And now that he's alone, he feels how much of his strength came from leaning against yours. It wasn't that you made him whole. You just reminded him who he was capable of being. And now, without you, he's drifting, trying to find that version of himself again, the one who only existed when you were standing beside him, cheering quietly, loving boldly, and asking for nothing but honesty in return. What shakes him now isn't just that you've moved on. It's that you've risen in a way that makes him question everything. He thought losing you would hurt, sure, but he thought he'd eventually get over it. What he didn't count on was that you'd become better after him, that you'd be happier, healthier, that your life would become more vibrant, more purpose-filled, more free. And now he's forced to sit in that truth. You were never the one holding the relationship back. You were the one pouring into something that was slowly draining you. And once you stopped giving to what was empty, everything in your life started to fill up. Your career, your friendships, your spirit. And that's the part that guts him, because he wasn't just part of your past. He was part of what you had to outgrow to become who you are now. He can't unsee it. The way your laugh sounds deeper now, like it comes from a place of wholeness, not hope. The way your eyes light up, not searching, but settled. You've built something beautiful, not just externally, but within yourself. And though he might never say it out loud, there's a part of him that knows. He helped create this version of you, just not in the way he imagined. Not through love, but through absence. Not through partnership, but through disappointment. He became the reason you had to go deeper within yourself, the reason you had to rebuild. And now that you've done it, he realizes the truth that hurts more than any breakup ever could. You never needed him. You wanted him, and that distinction is everything. He thought he'd forget, thought time would blur the memory of what you were, but instead, time has sharpened it. Every new interaction, every fleeting connection, every shallow attempt to replace what was real only brings him back to you. But not the you who waited, not the you who settled, not the you who loved him more than you loved yourself. No, he remembers the you who walked away with grace, the you who became more, not less, after the goodbye. And in that memory lies a lesson he'll carry for the rest of his life. When a woman rebuilds herself after being broken in your hands, her healing is not just hers. It's the echo of what you failed to protect. And that echo never truly fades, and now he lives with that echo, not as punishment, but as proof that he had something rare, something sacred, and didn't recognize it until it was no longer his to hold. And maybe that's the hardest part, not that you're gone, but that you're thriving without him, that your life didn't pause after he exited. It expanded, that you didn't just survive the loss, you became someone more powerful because of it. He'll think of you when the noise quiets, when the distractions fade, when he's lying next to someone who doesn't know how to hold his truth the way you did. He'll remember the woman who gave him a safe place to grow and the courage to be seen, and the moment he chose comfort over courage. And in that remembering, something inside him will always ache, not just for you, but for the version of himself that could have risen with you. If only he had been ready, but you were never meant to wait for someone to catch up to your worth. You were meant to rise, and you did.